I am here today as a candidate for the Attorney General of Vermont on the Progressive Party ticket, and one of the issues that I am running on is the prosecution of George W. Bush for the loss of lives of Vermont troops in Iraq, which I believe was done under that they were sent to war under false pretenses. So my intention, if elected, is to appoint the famous, really legendary prosecutor Vincent Bugliosi as my special prosecutor. He wrote a book which meticulously argues both the evidence and the law that will enable us to prosecute George W. Bush for murder in Vermont once President Bush, leaves office. One of the things that I have debated Attorney General Sorrell, the incumbent, on is the question of whether Vermont has jurisdiction to do this. And I believe that Vermont does. I strongly believe it, and so does my future special prosecutor, Vincent Bugliosi. So now I would like to turn it over to the expert on this issue, Mr. Bugliosi.
Before I get into the issue of jurisdiction, I want to say that 23 young Vermont soldiers, among over 4,000 American soldiers, are in their cold graves right now as I'm talking to you, because George Bush took this nation to war in Iraq on a lie, under false pretenses, and therefore he is guilty of murder. And yet the incumbent Attorney General isn't doing anything at all to George Bush, because he claims he doesn't have any jurisdiction to prosecute him here in Vermont, because the soldiers, he said, died in Iraq, which they did, not in Vermont. Now, the reason he is saying this, I'll tell you very concisely. The reason he has taken the position he has taken is because Bill Sorrell does not know the law. And I would think that the people of this state would be very alarmed that their Attorney General, the chief legal officer of the state, does not know the law. The law is very clear that if a crime is committed outside a state, here outside the state of Vermont, but has a very harmful, deleterious effect upon the people in the state, that state has jurisdiction. And if the horrible, violent deaths of young Vermont soldiers in Iraq has not had a terrible effect upon the people of this state, then I would ask, what in the world would? As far as I know, there's nothing more serious than being killed. So the point is, Vermont does have jurisdiction to prosecute George Bush for the deaths of the Vermont soldiers who died fighting his war, not your war or my war or America's war, but his war. And none other than the very prominent legal scholar, Dean Lawrence Valvell, Dean of the Massachusetts School of Law, has said that Vermont has jurisdiction. I want to tell the people of Vermont that George Bush is responsible for the deaths of these Vermont citizens, and we cannot let him get by with murder. I testified before the House Judiciary Committee, July 25th, and I said, listen, at this stage of my career, I don't have time for fanciful reveries. I never in a million years would suggest the prosecution of George Bush for murder if I didn't feel there was more than enough evidence to convict him and that I was standing on strong legal ground. George Bush, in my opinion, I feel very strongly about this, has gotten away with thousands upon thousands of murders, and we, the American people, cannot let him do this.
Charlotte said you'll be your special prosecutor. Are you licensed to operate here in Vermont?
No, but you do not have to be licensed around the country to practice law. If you have a member of the Vermont Bar attest to who I am and that I'm a member in good standing in California. So there's no problem. I don't have to take the state bar here in Vermont to do this.
The charge would be conspiracy. Your press release indicated conspiracy to commit murder?
Yes, both. There's two charges. There's conspiracy to commit murder, and then there is murder.
Yeah, if she gets elected...
Did he personally murder these people?
No, that he's guilty of murder. You don't have to personally kill someone to be responsible for murder. Charles Manson did not participate in the seventh... Yeah, right. If she wins on November 4th, I will start working 7 days a week, around the clock, and then once she's sworn in on January 20th, 2009, I'll be appointed special prosecutor. I guess I'll be living in a motel room in Vermont for the next 2-3 years. I'm extremely confident, I'm talking about the high 90s, that I will get an indictment for murder and conspiracy to commit murder against George Bush, Dick Cheney, Condoleezza Rice, and maybe several more.
Some grand jury in one of our counties.
Yes, yes.
Now, Charlotte, running for AG, you undoubtedly know that if you charge someone with conspiracy to commit murder and you have information that there were accessories after the fact to this, you must charge them also. You aware of that?
Yeah.
Okay. How about the U.S. Senate and Congress? They thanks to Mr. Bugliosi's book,
Yes.
they're on notice. They knew that this conspiracy took place, and then they've been voting to support this war. What about them?
Okay. The law is very clear that consent is vitiated by fraud. I have all types of evidence in the
You
book.
put them on notice, sir, with your book. Now they know.
Well, that's
still
not.
voting
Wait
to
a minute.
support
That's
the
not
war?
saying that they're accepting it. Some people have accepted it. The majority have not. I don't know even know if the majority have read the book. I can tell you about a very conservative Republican congressman from the South who read the book, and he said this. He said, "I'm convinced now that Congress was misled by George Bush into war," and he said, "Come November the 4th, he's going to go public with me," and he says he wants to be at my side if and when George Bush is prosecuted for first-degree murder. But you're assuming now that everyone agrees that George Bush took this nation to war under false pretenses. That's a premise that is not supported.
That's your allegation.
Yeah, I'm saying that. But to say that Congress all agrees with me now, there's no evidence of that. But if
they've been put on notice long before your book came out that he allegedly lied about the WMDs.
Well, you know, the
You're not
issue.
the first to make
Wait a
that
minute. The issue is not WMDs. You know what the issue is? Is whether or not he was telling the truth when he told the American people that Hussein was an imminent threat to the security of this country. That's the issue, not WMDs. If the issue were WMDs, we'd be going to war now with China, Russia, Britain. So the only issue is whether or not a nation who has weapons of mass destruction is an imminent threat to security of this country. George Bush told the nation on the evening of October the 7th, 2002, Cincinnati, Ohio, that Hussein was an imminent threat to the security of this country. And when he was telling the nation that, he was telling millions of unsuspecting Americans the precise opposite of what his own CIA had told him just 6 days earlier in a classified top-secret report that Hussein was not an imminent threat to the security of this country. 3 days later, Bush and his people put out an unclassified summary version of the top-secret classified report so they could give it to Congress and the American people. That unclassified version was called the White Paper. And in that white paper, which was given to Congress 7 days before they voted on whether to authorize George Bush to go to war, in that white paper, the conclusion of U.S. intelligence that Hussein was not an imminent threat to the security of this country was completely deleted. Every single one of those all-important words was taken out. So Congress and the American people never saw any of this.
What they have now.
You say they have now. You're making the assumption that Congress
You don't think
agrees.
The Senate Judiciary Committee, the House Judiciary Committee have seen these things and know this?
I don't know if they've seen it or not. I told them that.
They spoke on it publicly, sir.
Okay, all right. So your point now is we should
And
prosecute
they
Congress,
continue to vote to support
and you're
this
saying
verdict.
we should also support. We should also prosecute Congress. I'm going to have to look. I'm going to have to.
Wouldn't they be accessories after the fact under
Look,
what you folks have laid out
if
here?
they knew that George Bush took this nation to war under false
They do.
pretenses,
They know what you know.
Initially.
okay, it's not just helping them. It's help to be an accessory after the fact. Number one, you're leaving out one element. Number one, you have to have knowledge of the crime, and you're saying they have knowledge of the crime, right?
Well, the crime
Okay.
that you're claiming.
Yes,
they have
yes,
that.
yes. But you're forgetting the second element. The second element, they have to affirmatively take steps to help the perpetrator avoid arrest, detection, and conviction.
Is there a warrant for him at this point?
No. But I'm saying if we can show, and you're right. Wait, what? No, you're right. You're right. If they are actively taking steps to help George Bush avoid detection, arrest, and conviction, then they would be prosecuted accessories after the fact. Why are we talking about accessories after the fact when close to 1 million people are in their cold graves right now? Why are you talking about
Vincent Bugliosi should know if she's running for AG that in Vermont, I say it again, you can check it, if you have information about a murder conspiracy and there are accessories after the fact, the law in Vermont demands that you charge them also.
at the same time?
That's correct. If you have that information,
okay.
that's correct.
So you're saying that when we go to court in Vermont, not only Bush, Cheney, and Rice, but 500 members of Congress are going to be seated at that console table. Is that what you're saying? No, they're not going to be prosecuted at the same time. You may be right about a subsequent prosecution. They're not going to be in that courtroom.
To charge them as accessories?
I'd have to look at the evidence. I'm convinced that Bush, Cheney, and Rice took this nation to war under false pretenses. Now you're getting off on a side issue of whether Congress is guilty of accessory after the fact.
Why would it be a side issue? Those same soldiers.
Because it's not, but it's not the main issue. Who put them in their graves? Congress or George Bush, Dick Cheney, and Condoleezza Rice? You're suggesting that Congress did. Congress was misled into war. They were misled into war.
They became aware of the same things that you're claiming, right?
You're making that assumption that they became aware of it and they agree with me and are actively taking steps to prevent George Bush from being arrested. You have no evidence of that.
No warrant for him, sir.
I know there isn't.
So how are they preventing his arrest if there's no warrant to arrest him?
How are they preventing his arrest if they take active steps? If they take active steps to protect him. What active steps are they taking now to protect him? I'm asking you again, what active steps are they taking to make sure that George Bush is not arrested? What active steps are they taking?
You've gone over the second hurdle, I suggest, so politely. There's no arrest warrant for him.
I know there isn't.
So
All right.
you got to get that first.
But you're talking about accessory after the fact of murder, and I'm asking you, what steps do you know that they have taken to make sure that George Bush is not prosecuted for murder? What active steps?
You've ignored your claims, for one thing, obviously.
That's not an active step. You got to take an affirmative active step. And you're also making the assumption that they agree with me. Okay, but you're making the assumption that they actually agree with me. You don't know that.
You're right, they don't. Besides, you're just saying it doesn't make it so. You mentioned something from the University of Massachusetts or Massachusetts.
Yeah, he has said that. That doesn't mean that all Congress agrees with him.
No court has supported your claim yet, has it?
No, it hasn't gone to court yet.
Just your claim.
No, that's right. That's right. It's just my claim.
Who's a bigger criminal, George W. Bush or Charles Manson?
He's been asked that before.
Look, Charles Manson wanted to murder as many human beings as he could. He's believed to have been responsible for 35 murders. He was convicted of 9 murders. Very, very evil. I'm not suggesting that George Bush wants to kill people, but I will say this. He is a despicable human being who couldn't care less that he took this nation to war under false pretenses, and there may be as many as 1 million people in their graves because of it, okay? So he's very, very bad in that respect. I'm not saying that he wants to kill people, but he couldn't care less. I don't think this man has lost one wink of sleep over this war. Look, if you're suffering over what you did, are you going to say things like this, Laura and I, right in the middle of all the horror and the destruction and the sea of blood, are you going to say Laura and I are having the time of our lives? Are you going to say that I'm in a great mood? Are you going to say that I'm going to have a perfect day? Are you going to say in December of 2007, I'm feeling pretty good about life? This guy couldn't care less.
You said you're not sure that he wanted to. Don't you have to show intent?
All I have to show, I don't have to show motive, but you're right. No, I have to show that he deliberately and knowingly took this nation to war under false pretenses. I have words from this man's own mouth. You want me to give them to you? Okay, I have words from his own mouth. Absolutely. Yeah, not just Vermont, any state. That's right.
You're not sure that was his
What?
You didn't know that he absolutely wanted to kill people, you said.
You don't have to intend. You don't have to intend to kill people.
You don't?
No, absolutely not. No. If you deliberately set in motion a chain of events which you know will cause an innocent third-party agent to commit an act under the law, you're guilty of that act. Now, unless he wants to make the argument, and he's going to sound silly, it's going to be rejected out of hand, well, wait a while, I was contemplating a war without casualties. Unless he wants to make that argument, when he took this nation to war in Iraq, he absolutely knew that Iraqis were going to fight back. And in fighting back, American soldiers, including young Vermont soldiers, were going to end up in their graves. And she's got the courage to say, hey, wait a while, this is the United States of America. And in America, no man is above the law. The evidence of Bush's guilt is clear, so I'm going to go after him and bring about justice for the American people.
You know, I would appreciate it if Attorney General Sorrell took this case seriously, and I've actually got with me a letter in which I am delivering it to him, asking him to debate us on the issue of jurisdiction and the law. I chose Vincent Bugliosi to be my special prosecutor if elected because the man knows the law. He's got a fantastic track record in court. He has meticulously argued the case, and so I will be relying on him. Now, it seems to me, at the very least, that Attorney General Sorrell would address the issues that he has been presenting, because Attorney General has not. He kept saying it can't be prosecuted in Vermont because it has to go to International Criminal Court and it's war crimes. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the crime of murder and that it is going to be prosecuted under Vermont statutes. And I might also say that there are lawyers all over the country now that are looking at this case. They feel that the federal government has let us down, that Congress has let us down on the impeachment issue, so they are looking at states to be able to do prosecutions like this, not just of George Bush, but other high-level officials in the Bush administration, with the idea not only of punishing them for those crimes, but also for sending a message to future occupants of the White House that we will not stand for this continuous violation of the rule of law. So we're going to say that the request for accountability, the insistence on it, and the insistence for justice starts here in Vermont.
There are people that are going to see this tonight. I've already heard from them, just on the side one, who are going to claim that what you're claiming is complete childish nonsense. What's your response?
I don't think that the loss of 4,000 troops in this war or the loss of Vermont soldiers is childish nonsense.
Nor do they. They think you're claiming you can arrest and prosecute the President of the United States is childish nonsense.
Yeah, I've heard people say the same thing, okay? Because I'm on radio shows and they call in.
I'd
And they
like
say,
to hear from her.
Yeah.
okay, all right.
Right, okay. I'd like to know why they think it's childish nonsense. The fact of the matter is it's hard for people to really understand that the President of the United States is not above the law. That once he leaves office, he's as subject to prosecution as any of the rest of us. So it's not childish nonsense. Also, the law is on our side. What I would suggest to those people is that they get a copy of Vincent Bugliosi's book, because he has yet to have one attorney contest with him on the arguments that he makes in the book. So if people have questions about what I'm trying to do or what he's doing as my special prosecutor, read the book. Otherwise, go to my website, which is Charlotte Dennett for attorneygeneral.com, and you will read the legal arguments, a summary of the legal arguments on my website.
Are you suggesting we're going to be incapable of finding legitimate licensed attorneys who will not disagree with Mr. Bugliosi's book right here in Vermont very easily?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Are you suggesting that we will be incapable of finding licensed, competent attorneys in the state of Vermont who will harshly disagree, strongly disagree with Mr. Bugliosi's claims?
I don't think. I think that there will be.
He hasn't found a lawyer yet. What if we find one easily or doesn't?
You've got to read the whole book, including the endnotes. Okay?
Yeah.
Including the endnotes.
You
The
may
endnotes are very
find you
important.
may find people that disagree, but our challenge is to read the book, read the endnotes, and then let's have this discussion. And he sent a copy of this book to every attorney general in the country. That means that Mr. Sorrell has a copy of the book. Why doesn't he read it? That's my challenge. Read the book, then let's have a debate.
How many AGs have gotten back to you and said you're right on?
Zero. No, they're not saying they disagree with me. They don't have the courage to step forward.
You've
Okay.
heard from none of them.
I heard from one who is going to read the book, is very excited about it, but he said, I learned from his assistant, that particular state, for some curious reason, does not have jurisdiction over criminal matters. But you don't know the history of this thing here. People have been terrified.
No one
People have
AG
been.
has gotten back to you and said, yep,
Yeah.
you're right on.
And what's your point?
Because she said that you sent you. She
They
raised
haven't
the topic.
disagreed. They have not disagreed with me at all. They're afraid to step forward. I will give you an answer. No,
No, I
except
think-
one. But I'm going to give you an
Silence
answer.
doesn't be total
Wait a while.
consent, does it?
No, I'm not saying no. But I'm saying they haven't written back and said I'm full of it either, which is the opposite of what you just said. I'm going to give you an answer that doesn't come from me. Okay, it comes from Mark Twain. You know what Mark Twain said? He says, why? He said a lot of stuff, right? Why is physical courage so common, but moral courage so rare? Okay, everyone is terrified of going after George Bush. And you have to ask yourself that question. And let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question that will confirm, I think, my view that the right wing has a lot to do with this. What do you think would happen to Bill Clinton if he had done the same identical thing that George Bush has done in the last 8 years, including taking this nation to war in Iraq under false pretenses? The death penalty would be too good for Bill Clinton. They would be skinning him alive. She's got the courage to go forward. And you can't say that those that do not have the courage to go forward are not doing it because they don't agree with me. Nonsense. I'll tell you this. I hear all over the country, people call in on shows. Mr. Bugliosi, I respect you. I read all your books. What's happened to you? Have you lost your marbles? My first question, have you read the book? No. The people you're talking about, they haven't read the book, have they?
I don't know officer.
Did you ask them?
I suspect
Okay.
you're correct.
Okay. But show me people who have read the book that think there's anything crazy about this book. The chief law enforcement officer in the state of California, Jerry Brown, called me. He said, Vince, I understand you have a book out there against George Bush. It's about impeachment. I said, no, Jerry, it's about murder. You know what his exact words were? Chief legal officer, state of California, largest state in the union. Under what law, Vince? And I said, Jerry, under the law that's already on the books in all 50 states of the union. In California, 187, California Penal Code. I said, Jerry, I don't know of any federal or state murder statute that says that it only applies to certain people, not presidents, engineers, or golf pros, and that the killing has to take place in a certain place, like a car, a home, a street, not on a battlefield. Whereupon Jerry says, well, I guess you're right. So there's two things here. Number one, people don't realize that a president can be prosecuted for murder. And number two, they're frightened. This lady is not frightened. The people of this state, how many times have they used George Bush's name in vain? Said he's a terrible human being, he's a murderer. These are just words, they mean nothing. Now you have an opportunity. If this woman gets elected, I'm going after George Bush, and I'm extremely confident I'm going to get an indictment against him for murder and conspiracy to commit murder.
Charlotte, when this press conference, open, Mr. Bugliosi, am I mispronouncing your name?
No, you're doing a good job. As long as you're not saying
It's not
Bugliosi.
Bugliosi,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I'm married to an Italian,
Okay,
so
very good, very good.
hope I'm okay here. You know? When this press conference opened, Mr. Bugliosi mentioned, was it 23 victims, sir, Vermonters who died in
I
Iraq?
think it's 23 is what I've been told.
Okay,
I'll have to verify, but I've been told it's 23.
Have you spoken to any of those families, those soldiers' relatives? Number one. Number two, have any of them agreed to step forward with you and say their child was the victim of a murder that was the result of George Bush's actions?
That's not necessary under the law. Okay, but that's not necessary. You know that.
I understand it's not.
Good. I'm glad you understand that.
Yes.
As a candidate for office,
Yes.
have you done that?
Yes. I have not done it yet. I have put feelers out to talk to families that have been victimized. My understanding from a family that was participating in a conference in Massachusetts on the whole question of prosecuting these criminals said that it is very difficult to talk to the Gold Star families because it's very traumatic for them. There are divisions within families as to whether this war was done under false pretenses. And so if I am going to talk to families, I will do it with extreme sensitivity. And so right now I have not found the family, but nor have I had the time to diligently look for a family because it's not necessary to have the family involved. But I have, less than 2 weeks left, and I do have, as I say, I have some feelers out, and certainly if there are any families who at least want to talk to me about this, I welcome them to contact me.
By the way, I couldn't even call them to the witness stand at the trial because I couldn't even call them to the witness stand at the trial because the defense would object that they're trying to influence the jury. Okay, no, you're right. But at some point, obviously, we will. But in a criminal case, it's the people of the state of California, not the victim or the survivors, people of the state of Vermont versus George Bush.
Okay.
You're very good. You're very tough. You're tough. But I'll tell you, you're not too tough for me, okay? But you're very tough. You're very tough.
Channel 8 Brattleboro.